Welcome to the podcast. We Do Recover with Jared Miller, your host.
And I'm Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host.
This is a podcast about recovery from addiction.
We want to talk about what successful recovery can look like.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
It is Friday, September 23rd at 4:07. You know what time that means, right? Time for another episode of We Do Recover.
Really?
Here we are sitting in the studio. Yeah, I love these Friday afternoons.
Friday afternoon.
Today we have a special guest. She's come all the way from Layton, Utah, Davis County, where I grew up, my old stomping ground. Shan Blake has come on to tell us her story. We've dubbed it the comeback story. Before we get to that, though, episode 96. Wow, we've done 96 of these, Sellers.
Craziness.
Episode 96, part 1 is brought to us by Steps Recovery Centers. Steps Recovery Centers is here to help you or a loved one get help as soon as you're ready to reach out. Reach out by calling them at 801-800-8142 or just go right to their website. That's stepsrc.com. They have everything: detox, inpatient, outpatient, aftercare, a great alumni group. Definitely give them a call. We also have episode 96, part 2 is brought to us by Rise Up Sups. Rise Up Supplements, we're getting the website pulled up here if you're watching the video version,
Maybe.
Maybe? Okay, that's okay. If you want to check it out, go to riseupsups.com. That's riseupsups.com. So we've got 2 products out right now. We have the Mindful Mood, which helps decrease anxiety and enhance mood. And then the one that's been super popular lately, it's been flying off the shelf, is Mind Shift. Mind Shift increases focus. It helps optimize brain function. It's basically like an herbal Adderall in a capsule.
I took my mind shift before I got in the car to come here today.
Yeah? How'd you feel?
Beautiful.
Do you do 2 or 3?
2.
2?
Yeah, 2.
Yeah.
I'm a lightweight.
It's good stuff. Have you liked it? How have you liked it?
Oh, beautiful.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
We got to get Shan a bottle and see what she thinks.
I know. I need it.
Sure, for sure.
For sure. All right. Well, I got the sponsorships out of the way, Doc.
You did?
Yeah.
My
Now
turn?
Time for you to take over.
What are we talking
Autopilot's
about?
off.
What are we talking about? Okay, so episode 96. I don't know if Shan has listened to many of our episodes, but we always have a little tiny bit of a format, but it's a tiny bit of a format. We don't have a lot of formalities. But one of the things we do a lot is new and good.
New and good.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, new and good. So we're going to do new and goods. Jared, you want to start us off? What's new and good in the world of Jared Q. Miller?
Q.
I made it
My
up.
middle name's Q.
Made it up.
You know, my
Quixote.
new and good is just having Shan come down here. It's kind of cool. Like, I've had Brandon Stallworth come down here, like people from the area that I grew up in. It's always fun, you know, since I've relocated to southern Utah. This is kind of my oasis. This is my peace down here, you know, my little getaway. So it's fun to have somebody that I grew up in the same area come down and be on the podcast. That's my new and good.
I don't necessarily want to start off on content yet, but I'm going to start off with a little bit. How do you know Shan? Like, how did you
So
get in contact with her?
I've actually, I was just telling her before we came on, I actually worked with her husband. We
Okay.
sold cell phones together.
Okay.
I was probably getting high at the time. He probably had to fire me.
Sure.
But you know, just the same circles of people, same friends of people. You know, she's into fitness and stuff. I hit the gym like once a week. You know,
Once a week.
I follow her on social media. Yeah, she, you know,
Okay.
just similar
Got it.
circles.
Got it.
Yeah.
She
I like
is
it.
sponsored by One Mission Nutrition, who the
Yeah.
owner of One Mission Nutrition is Keaton Hoskins, who was my college roommate my first year down at Snow College. So just commonality of friends.
All right.
Yeah. Shout
like
out to
it.
Keaton. Love you, bro.
I like it. Shan, what's new and good in the world of Shan Blake?
I just got my business license for my cake business, which is pretty exciting.
Wait. Talk about that.
So I do custom cakes. That's like what I do for business.
You've never eaten a single bite of a
I
custard
try
cake
every
in
batch.
in your entire life. You've never
It's
eaten
hard,
a
man.
single bite
It's
of cake.
hard.
Don't try to tell me
I get
that.
like those cookies and everything everywhere. It's hard, but
Serious?
yeah.
For those of you that are listening to the audio version of this, Shan Blake is shredded.
Yeah.
She's 2 weeks out from a fitness show.
yes, that I'm gonna win first place.
I think you probably are.
I'm gonna.
Dr.
Listen,
Sellers
I've never been
invited
a
her to
judge
go
of
to
these
dinner.
things, but
Yep.
And she's like,
Wait,
I would
wait.
love to, but I can't.
My wife's listening.
Well, all of us.
Right.
All
Thank
of
you.
us, right?
Not
He
just me.
invited-
It was not just me.
Sellers takes everybody out to dinner usually when he comes down. He's a good dude like that. And she's like, I would love to, but I can't eat anything.
There's nothing I can
I'm
eat.
gonna
there.
order the biggest water on the menu.
Yeah, you can have all the water. The
Extra
restaurant has.
lemon.
Yeah,
That's it.
bring the
Extra
limes
lemon.
too.
But the cakes.
Yeah.
Yes.
cakes.
So yeah, I have my business
How long you
license.
been doing that?
Like 6-7 years.
Really?
I'm pretty good.
What's your most popular cake?
They're all custom. I do like the crazy fondant stuff, like animals. And
You
like,
do all kinds of
Yeah.
sculptures and wow.
it's pretty cool.
What? So you do that out of Layton?
Yeah.
It's her. A lot of her stuff is like if you watch Cake Wars.
Yeah.
Is that the
kind
name of the
stuff?
show?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
like,
like,
where they design
is it
different-
cake?
Is it
You know,
cake?
You have to like guess if it's cake or
Right.
not.
I love that show. I've only seen it a couple times, but I love that show.
Yeah.
I
'Cause
recently
sometimes
got
there's
a-
like a basketball there and
looks just like,
like
a basketball.
but there's a real basketball and a cake, and you can't tell which one's which, and it's like that's cool.
My wife
Yeah.
Mandy loves that show. Yeah, that's great.
It's really cool.
Awesome.
Give yourself a plug. Where do people find your
Yeah.
cakes?
How do we find out?
So I have my Facebook page and my Instagram page, but they're really long. So I'm Mrs. Blake's Custom Cakes on Instagram, and then I'm Blake's Cakes on Facebook.
Mrs.
So.
Blake's Custom Cakes on Instagram.
And I've delivered
you
an
say
hour
Blake's
away,
Cakes
an
on
hour and a
Facebook?
half away. So I'm in Layton, but delivery is available.
Is it available all the way to Orem?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's
Of
about an
course.
hour and a half.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's where Sellers lives.
Yeah. That's where
Closer
my
to
sister
2.
lives. Well, close. My mom
Great.
lives in Lehigh,
You can-
actually.
you can come visit your sister and bring me a cake.
I know, right? I will.
All right. I need to. No, I mean, I need to order one.
Cupcakes, too.
Yeah.
Cake pops, sugar cookies, all
Love
that
it.
stuff.
How do you do what
Bring
you
it
do
all.
and you cook all that
Yeah,
stuff?
that's
That's
not
crazy,
right.
right?
I try
That
it
is
and
not
spit
right.
it in the sink and rinse my mouth out.
For reals?
Yeah.
So you're like I'm gonna tell.
Or I chase after these guys and make them. I'm like, "What flavor is this?" And if they can't tell me, it's not flavored right.
She's pointing to her son who's in
Yeah,
the corner.
he's
He's
over here.
videotaping this.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So
I'll tell you a really super quick story. I treated a guy once for alcoholism who was a wine taster by profession.
Wow.
That's his job. His job was to taste wines, and he was, like some world-renowned wine taster guy, and didn't want to give up the job, but was an alcoholic. So he had to taste wine every single day of his life.
You might
I'd be
have
in
to
so
give
much
up your
trouble.
job.
I'm not certain if he's still sober.
yeah.
I don't know, but that's just a tough job. Okay, Mr. Denovan in the corner.
Oh, I wasn't sure if I was invited.
What
to this
is
party
new
or not.
and good in the life of Sean Denovan?
I bought a shipping container.
Nice.
There you go.
For what? Wait a sec. Hold on.
What?
Hold on.
Did
I'm
you get
gonna
into the smuggling business? or
wait.
what-
Let's all
what's
make
going on
guesses
here?
what he's going. to Hold on. Don't tell us. Let's all make guesses what he's going to do with the shipping container.
Chinese artifacts.
Nope. He's selling his house and moving in.
Boom. Not quite. No. I needed a garage. So now,
you need a storage spot.
yeah. So or plop it in.
So
next
you
week.
actually bought one, or you rented one?
Shawnee's
Yeah, so
artifacts.
I got the guy over there right now. He's plowing the ground, getting it ready. We have a wall built, and then boom, they're gonna drop it in next week. Big old crane, piss off the neighbors. It's gonna be fantastic.
So it's going to be underground. It's going to be.
Sure.
I thought about it. I thought about getting an underground one. I'm like, I need like an underground layer man cave thing, but that was gonna be like an extra $8,000 on top of
Okay.
the price.
Okay.
yeah.
So it's above ground.
bueno.
But they do it.
They do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
bet.
yeah.
I'll
It's like a
bet.
bomb shelter.
Yeah.
Pretty much, they have to like reinforce the frame and then tar the whole thing.
Rad.
Wow.
So I was like, yeah, how much? Oh, that's right. I'm poor.
Oh well. It is what it is.
Sweet.
Hey, it's new. It's good. I'm happy.
All right.
What about you, Doc? What's your new and good? And then we got about 15 minutes left in this first
Yeah,
segment. We got
sorry.
to get at it.
The good doctor has had a birthday this week.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
He needs a cake.
I know. I was just saying, like, dang.
I didn't even think about that because I didn't know she did cakes. My birthday was Tuesday. My birthday was Tuesday.
Happy birthday.
63 years of age. I know. It's about over for me. I'm just about like bury me in the shipping container.
Nah, you're just hitting your 2nd win.
We're gonna,
You just hit
I'm
your
about to
second
go
win.
underground in the shipping container. But that was my new and good, and I.
You got a chance to speak at the fall conference last week,
I spoke at
which
fall
is a
conference,
huge
too,
honor, right? Like
which-
only
it
so
was
many
cool.
people get to do that.
Yeah,
Doc.
it was cool.
Don't be humble.
I enjoyed it. I spoke about ketamine, which is an interesting topic that a little bit of controversy. Which you know me, I love controversy.
That's why you did that topic.
For sure. For sure. And then was there one more new and good thing I wanted to talk about real quick? There was, but I can't remember what it was, so I'll probably think about it in like right in the middle when Shan's telling the story. So let's get moving. Tell us a little bit about Shan Blake. Like, just introduce yourselves to us, first of all. I don't want to necessarily get into the story yet, but we will very quickly. But who's Shan Blake?
So I am a mom to 7 kids. It's a
Whoa.
his, mine, and ours, but they're all my little snots that I have at home, and I love them all to pieces.
How old are they?
So I have a 8-year-old, a 10-year-old. She's almost 10, and then 2 12-year-olds. They're almost 13. They'll be 13 this month. And then my 15-year-old, he'll be 16 this month. And then we have a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old.
Man, that's a big spread of
It's
kids.
fun. It was a little crazy at first, but it's fun.
Did you say, if I paid attention, 8 to 22?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's
Yep.
a cool.
So 2 are moved
that's a
out.
lot
We
of
still
kids.
have 5 at home,
Okay.
but so it gets pretty crazy, but
Yeah.
it's fun.
Awesome. Married?
Married.
2. Do you want to name?
Brian Blake.
Okay.
Yep, he's going to have to own it.
Yeah.
That's my
You
husband.
just mentioned him on the air, so
He's
that's good.
amazing. He's
Good.
super patient. He actually got me through a major part of my recovery. I don't know what I would have done without him. So
Awesome.
Love that.
yeah.
Awesome. You live
Own a
in
cake
you live in
business.
Layton. You own a cake
Yep.
business.
Live in Layton. We've lived in Layton. I've lived in Layton most of my life. It's practically
Grew up in Layton.
like my whole life. Yeah.
Went to high school in Layton.
Haven't gone anywhere in like 20 years.
Okay.
Longer than that, like 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you're not 30 years old, so it's not that long.
30.
But
5.
what?
Yeah.
That's not true.
Yeah.
Did you go to Northridge?
Mm-hmm.
Got you.
Mhm.
Okay.
For a minute.
Northridge. Thanks.
Northridge.
I
High
don't.
School.
I couldn't think of names of high schools in Layton.
There's Layton
Yeah.
High, and then there's Northridge.
Okay.
Northridge
Yeah.
High
I
School.
figured that's why I figured there.
all the
there
cool
must be a
kid, all the
Layton
cool
High.
and rich kids go to Northridge.
Yeah.
And you
All
went
the
to Layton.
poor
Dude, we were
east
so
side
broke.
kids.
And you went to Layton.
No, I went to Clearfield, which is even worse.
We were one
man.
of
They
those
were
ones
the-
they like let in.
They were
just
on the
out of
west
pity.
side of the I-15.
Yeah.
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 But I'm pretty sure we beat them every year in football, so that's that.
Yeah, probably.
Just kidding. Northridge beat us the year that they took state.
I was in pep band.
Were you?
Yeah, I was a band geek.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Nostalgia
what,
going wrong.
What instrument did you play?
I
in
played the
band?
French horn and then I played the mellophone in the pep band. It was a
Wow.
blast.
I don't even know what a
Yeah.
mellophone is, but
It's like
French
a
horn, I know.
huge trumpet.
It's okay.
It's like a trumpet but cooler.
Okay. It's a cool trumpet.
Yeah.
All right. I like cool trumpets.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into where are we at? 12 minutes?
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
a podcast about recovery from addiction.
Should we talk about it?
Let's talk about it.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
Let's talk about how you grew up, first of all. Born where?
Born in American Fork,
Okay.
but we moved to Layton. I went to East Layton Elementary from kindergarten up,
Okay.
North Layton Junior, and then Northridge until I dropped out.
How do you describe growing up?
I had freaking
was it
awesome
like?
parents. They were super religious, were, really spiritual. I had a good childhood.
Predominant
Like-
religion?
Yeah, everyone has their problems, but LDS.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
my parents were awesome, and we had 9 kids in the family, so
Whoa,
it
that's
was
a
like
big
yeah,
family.
yeah. Night games were a blast. We played all the time, so I had a good childhood.
Okay. Cool.
Me messing up was not my parents' fault. That's for sure.
Well, okay. I hope at this stages in our lives that we can maybe not blame our parents
No,
anymore anyway.
they
but,
did that. They were awesome.
but yeah.
Like
But-
my mom, she had a hard time when I was going through it, but she knows now it had nothing to do with her. So
Okay.
I can't handle it anymore. We keep beating around the bush. Hard time going through what? What exactly and where did that start?
Hey, back off, dude.
We got
Go
10
away.
minutes of the first segment. Let's get
We
to
got
it.
30 minutes in the next segment, and we're fine.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
So,
What he said.
story of recovery,
Uh-huh.
which means at some point there was,
Some drugs.
some active addiction going on.
yes.
What was going on in your life around that time? What led to it?
How'd you get into it initially?
So-
Like, how'd you get exposed to it?
It kind of started, in high school. I was 16. I ended up sloughing seminary one day, and ended up.
Nothing good happens when
Oh
you slough seminary.
no, it doesn't. I ended up being sexually assaulted by one of my friends, and I was like,
Wait, was that related to a sloughing seminary?
yeah, I went to his house. We sloughed
okay.
seminary. He drove me to his house. He ended up, getting all crazy. I had no idea anything. We were supposed to play video games. We were supposed to play Mario Brothers,
Sure.
and I told him, like, I need to be home by the time school gets out or my parents are going to know, all this kind of stuff. I ended up being almost an hour late from school. He, like, hid my clothes from me. It was, like, a horrible, horrible experience. Locked me in the basement. It was crazy. And then after that, I was so religious beforehand. I felt like everything was just ripped away from me. I got punished for no freaking reason. And so I was very negative about the whole thing.
Wait, what does that mean? You got punished?
Like, I felt like I got punished. Like,
The,
God was
being sexually
punishing me.
assaulted was a
Yeah, it
punishment
was like
from God.
Yeah, it was like
Okay.
it should never have happened. And I didn't take any accountability for myself and just blamed God and was super angry. And
Why would you be punished by God?
I don't know. See,
Okay.
I was like a dumb kid. I
No,
was
no,
just
it's
like
fine. I'm just.
getting through it, you
Yeah.
know? I don't
I
know.
think,
I
too,
felt like
when-
Is it because you left seminary?
that's what I felt like.
Is
I
that-
felt,
is that-
yeah, that's honestly, I was like, I should have been at seminary. I ended up sloughing, and like nothing like that had ever happened before. And it was like,
So because
so
you
crazy.
didn't go to seminary, God allowed you to
yeah,
be sexually assaulted.
and I was like,
So the mind of
angry.
a 16-year-old, right?
Well, especially when there's trauma. So let the clinical piece in me come out, right? Whenever there's trauma, our brains tend to search for reasons or commonalities or
yeah.
associations. And so it makes sense that you could draw those parallels. Being 16, your frontal cortex isn't fully developed at that point, and experiencing trauma. I mean, sure, right? Like, it's an irrational thought looking back, but at the time, you believed it. Yeah.
And I mean, I knew I shouldn't have slept. I knew I shouldn't have been doing what I was doing. And then all that crazy stuff happened. And I was like, whoa, you know? So I didn't really tell anybody. I came home from school. I didn't tell my mom anything. I just told her I stayed after, got a ride from a friend, didn't say anything, went to work. My coworker, I ended up telling her what happened, and she ended up calling the police. And I ended up having the police come to my work and taking statements.
How
and
did you like it when she called the police? Was that okay with you?
I told her
or
it was
did-
okay.
Okay.
Because she was like, this is insane. I told her the whole story, and I won't get into it, right
Sure,
now, but
sure.
it was crazy. And then I ended up taking those statements, and then they took my mom with me and did another statement and went and checked everything, took all the pictures and did all that stuff. And my mom was sitting there next to me, like bawling, listening to the whole story. It was absolutely horrible. And then everything got thrown out. So it's like that whole girls coming forward, nothing happening was crazy. I started binge drinking. I started smoking weed. I ended up like going into school drunk all the time. Ended up dropping out in I think I went my sophomore year and showed up for a second my junior year and ended up dropping out and just started into meth and drinking and like whatever I could get my hands on, really. And I turned 18 early, so I ended up moving out in my senior year, dropping out, just completely going off the grid, And my mom, she would come. You remember Layton Meadows?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I lived there with a couple of friends and not friends, a couple of other addicts who were just the same as I was, and my mom would come every week and bring me food, and I wasn't there half the time. She'd ask all my neighbors, hey, have you seen Shan? And they're like, no, we haven't seen her for days. My mom would just think she's in a ditch somewhere. She didn't know if I was alive or not, She'd bring little baskets of bread and meat and eggs and milk because she didn't want me to starve. And
Does she knows you're using at this point?
oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And there was just nothing. I just wouldn't listen,
Why move out?
because at home I was just sneaking out all the time. I don't know, to rebel, to be a jerk.
I just asked that because a lot of times, especially when there's some type of sexual assault, addiction, all of this stuff tends to usually lead to a lot of shame and a lot of embarrassment.
Oh, yeah,
And
just
I could
constant
imagine
lying.
having to sit next to your mom and share that. And then come to find out, she finds out that you're coping through drugs and alcohol. That had to
I
be a
didn't
little
want
bit
to
of an
have to come
uncomfortable
to terms
situation.
with what I was doing with
Sure.
the people around
It's
me.
easier to
it
run
was, yeah, it
and
was easier
hide.
to run and hide.
Yeah.
Do you
I
feel
didn't-
like your parents handled that your assault okay?
I don't blame them, but
No,
and I
no,
mean,
no,
who knows
no.
how to even handle that situation?
Nobody knows how. That's
So,
true. Absolutely.
I know
There
they.
is no right way.
Yeah, they did their best.
Right.
Was it
I'm sure
handled
that's true.
The best, maybe not.
Did it
but
somehow affect you the way they handled it, though?
so, my dad had said something.
I know you don't want to blame them,
And I don't
that's-
want to.
because it's nothing. It isn't related to them.
I took it as
They did the
that
best
at
they
that
could do,
age.
for sure.
And so that was an important part because that alienated me from my dad for years.
Okay, he said something that
He
bugged
just said
you.
something to the effect you shouldn't have been sloughing. And I took it as oh my God, that is my punishment. I shouldn't have been sloughing, you're right. And it reiterated what I had already thought to myself.
It's your fault.
But he how do you even talk to your daughter after something like that happened. I can't even imagine what was going through his head
Well,
as a parent now.
I think
so.
many parents would say the same thing. And
Just
yet,
to try and blame,
and
maybe
yet-
put it
right.
on something.
But
or,
the thing is, that
to
makes
cope.
you like it's your fault you
Oh, I,
got
like,
sexually
died.
assaulted, which is clearly
Yeah.
not true. It's never the victim's fault.
and I'm sure that's not what he meant. It was
I-
just like
I'll
a
bet
heat
you're
of the
right.
moment thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't talk to him. I hated him for a long time, like a long time.
Yeah. Okay.
So
All right. So you're living in
Flop
Leighton
house.
Meadows. Leighton
Yeah.
Meadows.
in Leighton ghettos is what
Yep,
everybody
yep.
calls it. Just
Just using away.
yeah, and I was a mess. It ended up all my roommates had ended up getting arrested, and so I was dating a guy who was older than me. He was getting like my alcohol and my cigarettes and stuff for me. And when they got arrested, it wasn't in my name, and so I asked him like, "Hey, can I come live with you because I can't stay here anymore? Nobody's here anymore."
Right.
So you're not even 21 at this point.
No,
Sorry.
I think I was 18.
Okay.
At the time. And so I moved in with him and his mom. I cleaned up for a little bit. I was still drinking all the time. I was smoking weed all the time, but it wasn't like meth, or I hadn't gotten into opiates or pills or anything. So I'd kind of like left the meth behind and gone more towards drinking and just, the weed. And then I got pregnant with my son and I cleaned up. I did really, really good for a long time. It wasn't until he was about 2 or 3 that I really got into the heavy drugs. So I was like working full time. I took care of him. His dad was in jail at the time when he was born. And I just, I handled everything. I was responsible. I was dependable. I was super proud of myself. His dad ended up getting out of jail and we did not mesh very well. We were on two very different, I don't know, planes, 2 different lifetimes, I feel like. But then, where was I?
What was it? How'd you get attracted to a guy that went to jail?
He was older and could buy my cigarettes and alcohol.
Well, and he
Okay.
didn't. Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
that makes sense,
She,
right?
Yeah.
she met him before he went to jail. It sounds
Yeah.
Well, for sure.
And it was actually for something that I wasn't even with him at the time. It had taken them almost 2 years to get everything through. And being pregnant, like wrote the judge, please let him out for his birth, and they would not let him. So
Dang it.
it was.
Now, how do you get your drugs?
Yeah.
and
I wasn't
alcohol.
on him at the time. I was pregnant with my son.
Oh yeah, good point.
So I cleaned up then, and him and I ended up separating when my son was probably 6-7 months old, just for differences. We weren't happy. I was working, he wasn't working. It was just too hard. And I had gotten a really good job. I had my own apartment. I had my own car. I had my own phone. I was taking care of everything. It was just like me and my little buddy. I ended up meeting my husband where I was working, and him and I, we were together for a little bit, and we had our 3rd miscarriage. And this one we had heard the heartbeat twice.
3rd in a row.
Yeah. So we'd been
Oh.
trying for like 6 or 7 months.
Okay, so you had a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Not with him, and then 3 miscarriages with him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And on the last one, oh man, I just lost my mind. Like the first 2, it was very early. We hadn't heard the heartbeat. I had lost it within a week or 2. It wasn't like, it was very difficult, but it wasn't like the 3rd one. We'd gone in twice. We were going to go in to see if it was a boy or girl. And it had been dead for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And so like, it just hit me like, oh, I've been talking, and singing, and like, we've been thinking about baby names and like all this crazy stuff. And then they didn't have time to do the DNC that day. So I had to go home and come back the next day. So then I went home just knowing, that I had my
Yeah.
baby in there.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I just felt so bad. Like my husband laid on my lap and was like, oh my gosh, what happened? And I took that like, you think I did something, when in reality, he was just like heartbroken,
Sure.
just going through it like I was. And so after that, I hated him. I resented him for ever saying that to me. And he had wanted to try again right away. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? I've just gone through all this. I don't want to do this again. Like it was too hard. I need a break. And I stepped out on my marriage.
Mm.
And that was
How long had you guys been married at that point?
7 months, maybe.
7 months.
We're
about out of
You
time.
can't see the timer, but the timer we got 30
sorry.
seconds left in this episode in this segment. So
which is perfect. That's a perfect little cliffhanger.
right, I like it. Yeah, let's leave it right there. We're gonna leave it right there, and we're with Shan Blake, and she has just stepped out on her marriage.
Yes.
We're gonna leave that hanging for the break, and then we'll come back right after this while you hear a word from our other sponsors. Well, no, some of the sponsors.
Steps Recovery Center.
You are listening to We Do Recover with Jared Miller and co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. We'll be right back after this short break with more of We Do Recover with Jared Miller, sponsored by Steps Recovery Center and the Hilton Garden Inn.
I'm Desmond Lomax, one of the clinical executives here at Steps Recovery, and once you become of the Steps family, you're just a part of the Steps family. A lot of us have overcome substances, overcome addiction, and now we're able to help other people. Second of all, we're also going to help you in a way where you can afford to be helped. Third of all, we're going to give you the same quality that many organizations are charging 2 to 3 times, and it's more about you than it is about our organization.
We welcome you back to We Do Recover with Jared Miller, co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. And now with part 2 of our podcast, Jared Miller and Dr. Terry Sellers.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We left you with a pretty nice cliffhanger there, but before we get back to the story, really quickly, our other sponsor is the Hilton Garden Inn. The Hilton Garden Inn is in St. George, Utah. They're lovely. So if anyone happens to be traveling through St. George that needs a really nice place to stay, they've got a great pool. They have great amenities. The staff is wonderful. The rooms are clean.
Always so clean. You like walk in and just the smell hits you.
Yeah.
Like it's just, I just love how clean they are.
Look up the old Hilton Garden Inn in St. George, Utah, and give them a shot at your business because you won't regret it. All right, let's get back to it, shall we?
Do it.
Shan had 3 consecutive
Yes.
miscarriages. So, unfortunately, when you tell me that stuff, so I used to be an obstetrician, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, before I got addicted to morphine. So all this, like all the stats are coming out in my brain, right? You have a 15% chance of any single pregnancy losing it to miscarriage. 2 in a row is not very common. 3 in a row is less than 1%. So 3 in a row, there is something else going on, typically. So genetic defects happen in 15% of all pregnancies, frankly. But to have that happen 3 times in a row is really uncommon. So there might be something else. Did you have a workup?
Oh, no.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And I
it's just
mean, I
that-
got
it's just-
pregnant when I was 18 and no complications
Yeah.
besides the C-section. He almost died when he was born, but because my cervix didn't open, it was like a whole, it was scary.
You know the takeaway I got from part 1, episode 96, part 1, is be careful what you say, right? Because when people are in crisis or people are in moments of vulnerability, sometimes what you say and what they hear are 2 separate things.
That's good.
Because like with her dad, he just made a comment, right? Like I'm sure he was going through a tough time himself.
Sure.
Maybe feeling a little disappointed, like as a father he couldn't protect her. But what came out of his mouth was you shouldn't have been sloughing, which in turn she heard this was your fault, which it's absolutely not, right? There's no justifiable reason for what happened to you. The second thing is after your 3rd pregnancy failed, the miscarriage, your husband, which I know him, he's a great dude at the time. I'm sure he didn't mean this, but
Oh,
what
no,
he
this
said
is my
was,
first husband.
Oh, your
Sorry,
first
yeah,
husband.
this
Okay.
is my second.
What he said was, how did this happen? Which you heard this was
What
your
did you
fault.
do?
Yeah.
Right, right.
Okay.
And so that's just my little golden
So,
nugget.
I love the nugget.
That's
Can
so
we take
true.
it one step further? Maybe when people are in crisis, we should listen more and not talk as much.
There's a great little video on YouTube that I show all the time in the groups that I run. It's called "It's Not About the Nail," right? And it's
Right,
basically
right.
the wife who's saying there's just all this pressure and there's this pain and it just hurts. And he's like, well, yeah, you got a freaking nail in your head. Just pull out the nail. And she's like, you know what I mean? Just listen to me. Like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Sometimes we need to just create space and just. Yeah,
Well,
listen.
and more, I would say as men, and I don't know if I'm an expert in this. I don't think I am, but women like to be listened to. We
Which
don't
we're
do that well.
fixers.
We don't
Yeah.
do that well. We want to fix
You
the
guys are
situation.
fixers.
We want to fix the
Yeah.
situation, right?
I am such a fix
That's
it
what we want.
Felix. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
I can't just like that's a skill I need to do better
Yeah,
at. for
you
sure.
didn't
It's like
need
the best
somebody to fix it.
intentions.
Sure.
It really is.
Well, and your problems couldn't be fixed anyway,
Mhm.
right? You didn't need somebody to fix it. You need somebody to just
to
be with
listen.
you and listen to you. Okay, good. Maybe if we learned that out of this is going to be awesome.
Mhm.
Okay, so you're
So,
you're
I s-
angry at your husband.
Yes, and I actually sought out drugs like
Mm.
on purpose. You know how
Okay.
people are like, "Oh, people don't become addicts on purpose." I was seriously like shopping for pills, like asking everyone I was hanging out with, like, "Hey, do you know somebody that can get pills?"
But yeah, because in your teens you learn that's your number one
Yes,
coping mechanism.
exactly. And
But-
I just
But you don't
wanted
want to
it
be an
gone.
addict. You want to be. You just
I
want to
just
feel
wanted
different.
it to be done.
You wanted to feel
Yeah.
different. You wanted to get away from how you felt right then.
So I started going to every party I could possibly go to. I ended up being fired from my great job that I had with full benefits for me and my son. I was making like $23 an hour. And I went in late for my third time, and they're like, "See ya." And so then I moved in with the guy that I had gotten pills from, and we started selling weed and just partying all the time and just getting so high all the time. And we started with Roxy's. And when we ran out of those, it was anything we could get a hold of. It was cocaine, it was heroin, it was just Oxycontin, just anything we could possibly get our hands on.
Anything to mood change. Yep.
And then it started to get to the point where we couldn't afford our habit anymore because it's two grown people that are just using more than they can even get their hands on.
Well, and unfortunately, you're the source of paying for it.
Yeah,
$22 an hour
yeah,
just got way worse.
yeah. So that's why the selling weed was
Right,
necessary,
right.
selling drugs was necessary. And we started stealing things and and my son is 3, at the time, and he's still with me, and he would get locked in his room for hours on end. He probably had to feed himself all the time. I was super addicted to Xanax and heroin. Just asleep all the time, just out of it all the time. And he went through a lot. He got abandoned in Las Vegas with me. That my ex that I was with was so abusive. Like, we would fight all the time. It just became more and more common to just get choked and hit and beat. And I would show up at my parents' house at like 3 a.m. covered in blood and be like, "Hey, can I stay here?" And they kept saying, "If you keep going back to him, we're not going to keep helping you." And like, and the last time,
So they can see it was a toxic relationship.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Pretty obvious to everybody else around you.
Oh yeah. And I was just sickly looking. I was gray. I didn't even look,
Human.
Yeah, you just look emaciated and disgusting and not even the same person. You just look dark. I look
Yeah,
at pictures
like a
of
zombie
myself.
on The Walking
yeah.
Dead.
Yeah.
For sure.
Just even in your eyes, it's almost like your soul goes dim.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know?
we see it every day. I'm sure Doc sees it in detox. I see it when they come into residential a lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my parents, the last time I was staying at their house, they're like, "If you go back to him, you cannot come back here." And I waited it out for a little bit. I was withdrawing and trying to get through it. And it ended up, my dad and I got into it one day, and I was like, "F you, I am out of here." And he's like, "If you walk out that door, you cannot come back in." And I was like, "Okay, great." And I went back to my ex, my abusive ex, because I wanted the drugs. I wanted it to be over with. I was sick of withdrawing. And ended up staying with him for way too long. And then I'd gone, the whole time I'm still married with my first husband, by the way. He was patient through the whole thing. He had no idea what was like going on. I ended up
But
going,
you were absent.
yeah.
You weren't living with
I
him.
would leave for like 3 days
Yeah,
at a
okay.
time.
Okay, so you sort of lived with
Yeah,
him, but you just
he-
wouldn't be there very much.
Yeah. And so after I had left my parents' house, I had gone to stay with him. I just house hopped. Like, that's kind of what you
Oh,
do
yeah.
is you just, any bridge that's open, you get on it until it's burned, And so I had gone and stayed at his house with his mom and him. And I wanted to fix my marriage. So we decided to try to have a baby again.
'Cause that'll
which is
fix it.
crazy. And he had no idea I was still using it on the what is it that they give you to get off of it? It's not oxycodone. It's
Oh, you're talking methadone.
Methadone. Yeah, that's what it was. And so I had like my little stash of methadone and I was like trying to get through it. And I ended up starting to use again. So I'd gotten a hold of my ex, told him to bring me some stuff, and then found out I was pregnant with my daughter. And I was super addicted still. Like I was deeper in it then than I had been
Ever.
the whole time. And I used my entire pregnancy with her. Like I would leave for days at a time. My husband at the time was thinking I was trying to take her. Like I was trying to get another life set up so that I could leave when she was born. And I didn't realize he was getting a lawyer set up, which was great. Like good job, because he should have. I was a mess. I never said a word to anybody. I was shooting up heroin daily, pregnant, like 8 months pregnant, 9 months pregnant. I only stopped when I had gone into labor with my daughter, and I just kept thinking like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? You know, what's going to happen as soon as she comes out? And man, hearing her cry for the first time, sorry, I just thought like, thank God she's okay, you know? But I hadn't used for almost a day when she was born. So she was born withdrawing like hard.
Thank God she's okay because you'd had 3 prior miscarriages.
Just that she was born alive. I was, you know, being a drug addict, I'm like, I don't know if she's okay, like if she's going to come out. Just
a lot of fear.
Yeah, just I had no idea. And I was so selfish. I didn't say anything. I didn't warn the doctors. I didn't say anything, you know, because I was preserving myself as an addict. And so she was born and started crying, and I was just so relieved and scared to death. Like, it's coming. You know, they're going to find out any second now. And she ended up spending her first month of life in the hospital on anti-seizure medication that was very dangerous to have babies on, but she was in such severe withdrawal, they had to keep her seizures under control. And constant morphine every couple of hours. They ended up weaning her off. Man, that girl went through it. She's a little fighter though. And then within a couple of hours of her being born, obviously a caseworker came up to my room. And my husband at the time was downstairs getting some food. And she's like, so we need to talk about something. And I was like, oh my gosh, here it comes, you know, and there it was. She's like, your daughter is so severely addicted. She's like, I've worked here for almost 11 years. I've never seen heroin levels that high in a baby before. It just killed me. And they were like, we're not going to take her from you, or we're not going to take her from you. If you can prove, like if you can go take a drug test today, we'll see where your levels are at. And if we can see that your levels are going down after this, then we'll make like a plan for you to be able to be her mom, to be in her life. And I went and took the drug test, and I went and shut up in the bathroom right afterwards. Like I told her like, oh, you know, that's great. Let's do it. I had talked to my husband at the time. He found out everything that was going on. I can't even imagine what went through his head. And he drove me to the drug test and told me he'd be there through it if, you know, I wanted him to, and we decided we were going to do it. And I just, behind closed doors, you know, you sit and lie your way through situations. And all the time I'm thinking like, oh, I got to get my fix. Like I feel horrible, you know? And I ended up calling my ex-boyfriend to the hospital to bring me more drugs while my daughter is in there withdrawing, and my husband's downstairs, and it was horrible.
First of all, Shan, I just want to say God, thank you. Like the pure vulnerability, right? And just the rawness of sharing that piece of your story is very touching. I'm over here choked up watching you getting emotional. Secondly, that's not that uncommon, right? Family members, friends, people look at individuals in the situation that you just described and go, why can't they just stop? Mm-hmm. But at that point, and I'm sure Dr. Sellers could go into a whole lecture on this, you're so dependent that you really don't have a choice. The choice has been taken from you at that point. This is a disease of choice, right, Doc? But at that point, like you're so physically dependent, your brain's correlating death with stopping using, right?
The only thing I want to say about it, I don't want to do the lecture because we've done it a bunch and we don't have time, but There isn't anything else on the planet that will break a mother-child bond like drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the single most ridiculous thing that it does. Is it can break them, which is an almost impossible bond to break.
Do you still beat yourself up for that though? Because I watched you.
Well, she's
It's
doing it right
like-
now.
It's not that I beat myself up about it. It's just really hard to have those memories and know it was me. Like I just love my kids so freaking much.
I would say
And
that
it
probably
just-
wasn't you.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
It's
But
funny,
at the
I was
same
just gonna
time,
say
it's
the
like
same thing.
it's in my
definitely.
head. You know, I was in those situations. I remember it like it was yesterday. You know.
Okay, so we got 11 minutes left.
Okay.
How'd you
So-
stop? How'd you stop?
I ended up getting arrested.
Okay.
Thank goodness. I had ended up walking out of the hospital, told everyone, peace out. I'm going to be a drug addict. I don't want to quit. I'm not ready. Take the kids. I went into court and gave my son up and gave my daughter up and was like, I am not in any position to take care of them. I am not ready to quit right now. So have their dads take them, have them take care of them, and I'll get back to you. And I ended up going back with my ex-boyfriend who was abusive that I had gotten the drugs from. And him and I just went straight downhill, just, you know, as far down as you possibly could. I OD'd in Salt Lake, died, and they brought me, you know, back with Narcan. And I just woke up going like, don't arrest me. You know, like just not a care in the world. Just don't arrest me. And then it ended up, my boyfriend had a warrant and we had pulled up to 7-Eleven and like all these cops came out of nowhere and I had a bunch of crap on me and was passed out high in the car and woke up in jail. And it was the best thing that ever freaking happened to me.
A lot of people say that when they're sitting in the back of that cop car, it's almost a sigh of relief,
It's
right?
like, yeah.
Did you
kind
feel
of,
that honestly?
a little
Or
bit,
were you
yeah.
scared?
It was like a mix of both.
Okay.
Because it was like the only time I ever had clarity about what I was doing and the situation my children was in jail. When I could sober up in jail and think about what was going on and talk to my son through a jail phone, you know, is a whole other thing.
Not intoxicated?
Mhm. Yeah, and actually hear his little voice without being messed up.
Yep.
You know? So I had my court date to get out of jail and I had given the judge my parents' address, like that was the place I was going to go. And my dad stood up in court and he said, no, that is not the address she will be staying at. She is not allowed to stay with us. You know, he'd finally cut me off against my mother's wishes. They had a huge, I'm sure that was interesting at home. But I hated him for it at the time. Best thing he could have ever freaking done.
Yeah,
So
tough love.
So I ended up giving them one of my friends' addresses. I had gotten out of jail. I was homeless in a broken down truck for a while. And there was one night that I was sitting at a gas station parking lot.
Was
And-
it a 3 or a 4-bedroom truck?
It was it had an extra room in the back. It was kind of nice and a covered back, so it was classy.
Pretty
You
sweet.
know, it was one of the classier
Okay.
ends. Yeah.
Sweet.
My alternator was broken, so I had to charge it.
Oh my
You know, so I could go anywhere. But
Beautiful.
other than that, it was pretty classy.
Yeah.
So I was living at like gas stations because they were open all the time. If I needed to use the restroom, brush my teeth, whatever. And I was sitting there just listening to cars go by. I couldn't have my kids. Everything was supervised visits. And I was looking across the street at Albertsons at the time and I was like starving. And I just thought like, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to steal some freaking food, you know, because I'm freaking hungry. But I was on a plea and abeyance program. That's what they let me out on as I was on probation. I had to make sure I drug tested and I was on a plea and abeyance. So nothing, you know, nothing.
Right. Can't be caught stealing.
Yeah. And I just kept thinking like, oh, I'm so hungry. And I honestly just said a prayer. I am super religious. I was always raised that way. And I just said a prayer, like, get me through this night, you know? And I had like this warm feeling go over me. I wasn't hungry anymore. I fell asleep. And I ended up having a job interview at Maverick the next morning. I got the job. And I ended up meeting my husband, Brian. I was homeless at the time. And his buddy fixes cars. And he had my car, and I was kept waiting for him to fix the alternator, but he didn't realize I was living out of my car. So he's like, oh, you know, I'll get
You
to
have my
it. I'll get to
house.
it. And I'm like, bro, I need my clothes. You know, I need my toothbrush. I need like my stuff. And so he was like, oh, I had no idea. And he ended up having a room available in his house. So he's like, you know what? If you need to rent a room from me, you totally can. So I ended up moving in with him. Him and his girlfriend broke up. And him and I were like best friends from that day on. Like, he was going through it, I was going through it. Like, he didn't have his kids at the time, I didn't have my kids at the time. He helped me get 2 drug tests. He made sure, like, he wouldn't give me money, but he'd pay for the drug test if I was waiting for a paycheck, so I didn't miss my plea in abeyance program. And it was that night I realized I wanted my kids more than anything, that it was either I was choosing to die, and give up my kids forever, or I had to get this done. Like, it just had to be done, and it was just my rock bottom, my life-changing moment. And I just decided that day and just worked from then on. And I mean, it was horrible. The withdrawals are just, they're hell, to try and get through it and to try and work and to try and feel feelings again and emotions again is intense. And
Were
it's
you ordered
really
to
hard.
any type of treatment program, outpatient, IOP?
I went to
like
counseling a lot. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
There were
So-
weekly counseling sessions that were life-changing. Like, anyone afraid of counseling, you shouldn't be. If you find a good counselor, it changed my life.
So you did do like some outpatient therapy
Yeah.
stuff in that process?
And
Because I know most plea and abeyance programs, they do order you to some type of
AA
outpatient.
programs. Like, I needed to go to AA programs and to all of my counseling appointments, all of my drug tests, all that kind of stuff.
Do you think that structure kind of helped you rebuild?
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Because
Because
they're
when I was
monitoring you
freaking
through
out-
UAs.
Yeah.
You've got to show up for counseling. You've got to do the fellowship meetings. Like,
Yeah.
Do you
And
think
you
that played a
go
part
there
in-
and you see people are like you. Everyone in there is broken and just trying to get through the day.
yeah.
And then you're like, okay, I'm not alone. If they can do this, I can do this. And then you hear other stories that are worse than yours, and I'm like, I can do this. I can get through this. And you just relate to those people.
For some of us, you get ordered to treatment so many times, you just decide to start to work in it because
Yeah.
it's the only thing you're a pro at.
Yeah. And I mean, I had been in and out of women's shelters and, like, the drug programs that my parents tried to put me in, but it wasn't my decision. And I had finally just reached the point where it was my decision. It was something that I wanted, not that my parents wanted, but what I wanted.
That internal motivation instead of the external
Yeah.
factors. Yeah.
And so my dad and I, because we were not, happy campers there for a while, and I had ended up getting married to Brian. My dad walked me down the aisle, and we had kind of talked back and forth, about the situations and how I'd felt about things. And it ended up his last birthday that he had. It was time for us to go. I needed to go finish a cake, actually. And I went to go tell him bye, and he just stopped. And he grabbed my hand and he looked at me and he was like, "You know what, sweetie? You always said that you would never come back. And I am so glad you did. And I always knew you would. I love you, babe." And that was the last time that I ever talked to him. And it's like he knew I needed to hear that because we had gone through so much. And I was able to tell him, like, "Dad, thank you for getting up in court and doing that." Because me as a parent, that had to just be so hard, So I told him, "Thank you for having the faith in me to do that and to have the balls, really, to do that and to go against my mom and deal with all that stuff at home," because he just knew it's what I needed.
Yeah.
So-
Sometimes doing the hardest thing is, what's needed is the hardest thing for sure. As hard as it was for you, what I'm trying to say here is as hard as it was for you to hear it, I'm sure it was twice as hard for him to say
I
it. 'cause
couldn't
you're his
imagine.
daughter, right?
I couldn't imagine.
So that was the last conversation you had with him. He passed.
Yeah.
Got
He
it.
had slipped into a coma for 2 weeks. That was the last time I saw him awake.
Wow.
And then it was when COVID was going around, and so I had a cold, and so I wasn't allowed in the room to even see him in his coma or anything like that. So, I feel like he knew, that he was going and that he needed to let me know.
And you got that closure, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was awesome. So,
I'd like to point out you have a lot of grace for your parents. Like, you have many times said they were doing the best they could.
I
and they
put him
were-
through hell.
Yeah, I'm sure, right? I'm sure that's true. And they probably were doing the best they could. Use that grace towards yourself, too. Many times when you probably didn't do what you would consider now to be your best with your kids because you were using, maybe it was the best you could do.
Well, and like now I will need to have a conversation with my daughter eventually. She is a heroin addict, so if she tries anything, she'll be instantly addicted.
Probably.
And we had a little mother-daughter date the other day, and she was like, "Mom, why can't we split time together? Like, why does dad have me more than you have me? And I went into it a little bit with her, like, you know what? I was not a good person. I did not used to be somebody that you could be around. And, hopefully someday soon that'll be able to change and we can do 50-50 and he'll realize that, it's okay. And she's like, but Mom, you're just such a great mom now.
That's so awesome.
And I just, man, it's like, you're right.
Yeah. And that's why we're calling this the comeback story.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is
And just
beautiful.
to hear her say that is just,
Yep. Makes it all okay.
Yeah.
Makes it all
I think
okay.
with a minute left here, though, I've got to point out, I do think that you've cross-addicted. Because, man, I see your workout videos.
I
and
am.
She's,
I am.
Yeah, she gets
I'm addicted
after
to
it.
shreds. I am.
Well,
It's a problem.
may I point out that that heroin releases dopamine in the midbrain, and so does exercise.
Does it?
Yeah.
Ooh,
There you
that's
go.
what it is. And it's
There
a
you go.
schedule. I needed
For
like
sure.
somewhere to be, something to do,
Yep.
Yeah.
People cross addict all the time, but the problem is you don't lose your job over this kind of addiction.
Yeah.
In fact, she might have made a job
Yeah.
out of it.
Oh, I'm
right?
sure she has. I'm
Yeah.
sure she
They
makes
don't lose
money.
Sponsored
relationships
athlete.
over it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So the thing is, the things we choose to sort of focus on that release dopamine, some of them are healthy,
Absolutely.
right? So
Yeah.
it's okay, but some of them aren't.
Thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank you.
Like, I really appreciate your vulnerability. And just listen, there's going to be a lot of people, I'm sure, that are going to hear this and be inspired by what you've had to say.
That's a great story.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Yep.
a great story.
I hope so.
Appreciate you driving down.
All you moms out there.
Yep, you can do it. Comeback story, Shan Blake. Thanks everybody for listening. This has been episode 95, did you say, or 6? I can't remember.
96.
Episode 96 of We Do Recover with Jared Miller. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us today on We Do Recover with Jared Miller.
Help us spread our message of hope. Like, comment, and share.
If you have any topics or ideas for future shows, please share that on our Facebook page.
That Facebook page is We Do Recover with Jared Miller. If you or a loved one needs help, please reach out to us. Again, thank you for listening.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. This has been a production from a podcast studio.